Welcome back to the sequel or the continuation of last night's live stream that was attacked by tech goblins. They were not happy with us. We did not pay the tech goblin tax or something, and everything went wrong, and we just disappeared. So we're back to continue the conversation about what it's like in high school right now. What is the experience that kids are going through, Gen Z, and we're trying to use as much crazy slang as possible. So welcome back.
Clock it. Clock it.
Yes, and you used the nails
Clock the
too.
T. Okay.
Yes, we're
Yeah,
gonna give all the tea and on how to become Sigma, right?
I
We're
guess.
now we're
Yeah.
speaking your language, kids, right?
Sure. Hey. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Last night was crazy. Yeah, the ghouls and goblins really got to us, but I'm happy to be here and we can. I think this one's going to be more high quality for the folks at home, and I'm glad you're interested in what the Gen Z Zoomers are up to because they are an interesting group, and I'm mainly talking about high schoolers. I love them. I think they're great, and and I think that there's a lot to learn from old people. Really, especially very old people. They are interesting. They are very interesting. They have good stories, and from young people. And yeah, young people have different kinds of stories. They're not as interesting as old people's stories, but it's crazy to sort of live in a world where, there are groups of people who don't know much. They don't know references. And I think this is different from previous generations because you and I grew up, with movies and with movies for one. I mean, with
Mhm.
movies and kids, teenagers generally, teenagers and young people in their early 20s don't watch movies. And I'm sure, oh, actually they do. I'm sure there'll be somebody, but but they don't watch movies, and that's fine. But they don't watch films. They don't like, maybe they go to films and they might go on dates and stuff, but they don't even have the quality movies that we did, of course. And we forget that the Karanka happened, just 5 years ago. So a lot of teenagers were barely sentient
Yeah,
when that happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that definitely put a arrested development into the mix, especially for that age group. I can't imagine walking around thinking you're some kind of like germ vector virus. People are a virus, scared of everything.
Yeah, they don't. It's funny because, in my experience, none of the political things and the those kinds of ideas, like bigger ideas, don't really appeal. They don't really affect them at all. That's not even on their radar.
Mm.
All I know is that I'm sure people watching who have kids who are like just becoming teenagers or something, that was the main, they were mainly at risk, during that whole time because imagine that you imagine that have a child and they grow up and they don't at formative, very formative years, they don't recognize identity. They don't recognize the human face.
Mhm.
And that was blasted on them without getting too much into that was blasted on them very hard for a long time and was certainly out of their control. Older kids, I'm talking about like 18-year-olds and into their 20s, had they were less affected by that, but they were affected because if you were 20 now and you were 15 when this sort of thing happened, that's also a very important time in your development as a human and what you believe and the way you act, and that really had a detrimental effect on people that hopefully we can make our way through it. And there's a lot of a blame. There's a lot of blame as far as the education and stuff goes with that. At some point, you have to move on and say, okay, well, it's just that people don't know how to read, but that affected them in very deep ways. I think that they don't really understand yet, but that we could see at the time that was going to happen. So,
Mhm.
but it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to someone someone told me the other day. I said something and I made a group of people laugh and they young people laugh and they said they were laughing at me and they always go ew. and I said what, am I cringe? And they said yeah, but you're cringe you have dad cringe. So
Uh-huh.
dad cringe is better than cringe, cringe. And I thought, well, that's a high compliment. And then, of course, then
Yeah.
somebody told me I had infinite aura.
Oh, nice.
So,
Infinite aura points.
yeah, infinite aura and infinite dad lore, which was pretty cool,
Nice.
I guess. You know.
That's a good compliment.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so last night we were talking about embracing your cringe on the live stream. And
Hmm.
so you have the good kind of cringe. It's like um good-natured, humble, um willing to laugh at yourself, don't take yourself too seriously. And that's really, for the young people, that's something that is one of the qualities of being attractive, is not uh, caring if you're cringe almost, like, um,
Yeah.
embracing that everybody can be goofball sometimes. Do you remember when everyone got mad about that spider thing?
Yeah. Wait, which spider thing? Are you talking about? Do you want to see my spider collection? Are you talking
Yeah,
about that?
something like
Yeah.
that. And everyone's like, "You're
Yeah.
so mean. How can you shame him?" And I'm like, everybody has a story like that. I mean, that's just a
Hmm.
coming of age. And to be able to overcome those things, like, don't take it so seriously. Like, it's not that deep, bro. If I could
Yeah.
put it in Gen Z, um, speak, it's like you have to learn to let things. I mean, I just heard a tragic story about, a 10-year-old unaliving because of bullying. And I'm like, these people take themselves so serious. Like,
Yeah.
nothing.
Well, yeah. I think that. Look, I try to be diplomatic. Oh, I don't. I guess that's just the way it ends up being. I think it's important. I think we might have mentioned this last night. It's important to give people a way out, to give them a back door, an exit.
Hmm.
In situations, and just in terms of sort of diplomacy in your regular life. I'm not talking about like in a debate situation or something serious, just kind of working in, being in life. And we, we're all called to love each other, but we don't necessarily have to like each other.
Hmm.
And I think have a really, people have a really hard time. We all do have a really hard time with pride and our egos. And the one thing that really gets to people, especially dudes, is thinking that somebody doesn't like you or that somebody doesn't take you seriously.
Hmm.
I think that not being taken seriously is probably worse than someone not liking you. But one thing that I mean, I've been teaching for 18 years, and one thing that was a sort of a hard lesson, especially at the beginning, was not to try to get the last word, because teenagers are inevitably going to get the last word when you're. I'm not a parent, so when you're a parent, you have the last word in your household, but it's different when you're, for instance, at your job, and you have to learn that some people are not going to like you. We rub someone the wrong way, or they just don't like us, or they have something to say, and that's fine. I think one thing we talked about last night was having a sort of nonchalance and a nonchalant attitude, because
Hmm.
it's just like your opinion, man. You don't. It doesn't really matter. It's sort of how I kind of look at things.
It's funny because all my family on my dad's side, my dad, they're from Appalachia, and I don't know if you know anything about Appalachians. They're a funny
Hmm.
breed of people, but it's almost impossible to embarrass them
Hmm.
because I don't even know how to describe it. Like, they will show up to a fancy thing in overalls and not even think twice about it. I'm here, I'm gonna have fun.
Yeah.
Like, their mind is somewhere else other than like pomp and impressing people. So it was a funny way to grow up in my household. So my dad is like really, you you could say he's embarrassing. He didn't embarrass me because I know those type of people, but like any other normal people. So I always say my embarrassment bone is broken because Appalachians just don't have that ability, I guess.
Well, Jamie, you bring up a good thing and a good point, and that is kind of the dad lore.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed is that I don't know what you think about this, but when I was a teenager, dads were, everybody. I was blessed that all of my friends. I grew up I was very lucky and blessed how I grew up, and my parents are still together, and a lot, all my friends had dads, and we had strong people in our lives. But at the same time, it was the 90s, and a lot of people did not, they had attitudes about their dads, like when your dad gave you advice or something, it was kind of like you discounted it right away because it was your dad.
Hmm.
And now I've noticed that that is the opposite of the case. I'm not just talking with me, people my age. I've since learned, now that I'm an adult, of course, that most of the things that probably all the things that my dad told me were true and they were right, and I should have listened.
Mm.
It's kind of like when you're a teenager, when you're a boy, especially in the 90s, and something goes wrong, or you're moping around, or you're depressed. You get your dad coming in and saying, "Why don't you? You need to go for a run. You need to go work out." And at the time, it was kind of like, "That's so stupid. Why don't you? Why don't you listen to me?" And now I'm not saying that's how it was, but kind of. But now I know that he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. He was right to say those things, and that's like the best kind of dad, because there are so few dads in the world. There's so, especially in this country, there are a lot of people who don't have dads. They have no father figure in their life. That's kind of why we're doing this.
Yeah.
They have no father in their figure in their life. They have nobody to learn from. They have no sense of healthy shame that they get from male friends if you're a guy. And you need those things. You need somebody to tell you that you don't look right, or you look like a dork, or you're not dressed right, or you're not doing it right, or the way you talk to girls is weird. You need those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I like what you say about your dad, because I've noticed that with a lot of teenagers, especially teenage girls, who have dads, they the way they think about their fathers in a very healthy way. Is a very healthy thing. They know that their dads are going to be cringy. They know that they're going to be embarrassing. They know that they are kind of weird and eccentric. They have their little things that all dads do, but they love them for that,
Yeah.
and that to them is like the model for how a man really should be, right? Somebody who is strong and independent and has their personal interests and their pursuits, but is also somebody who like works with their spouse, with their wife as a team, and somebody who is, you especially get this in very low, I'll say low income places, and with low income people, that you do one thing that's different from very very wealthy people, is that the father figure and the parent figure can be very imposing, and they fear their parents. They fear their parents in the best way. I mean, look, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And
Hmm.
if a father for a household is supposed to be a kind of avatar, loosely speaking, I'm just some dude, so I don't know, but an avatar for the way we think about God, then you should fear your parent. You should fear that if you do something shameful or you break the rules, that there will be a reaction, and the reaction isn't one of like, violence, that I'm afraid cowering in a closet. It's, I'm afraid for what dad's going to do when he comes home. But I know that the punishment will suit the crime, and that things will get better after that. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, fear in that um you don't want to upset your parents, you don't want to disappoint them. Like that's the worst
Hmm.
feeling ever. Like I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And you're like, "Oh man, like no."
Yeah.
So yeah, because they have sh showed you what virtue is and what the boundaries are and what love is, and you have respect for them, and that's why you fear uh their wrath, even though you know they can't really do anything bodily. Like hopefully you're not fearing a beating. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just, fearing losing respect in their eyes, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a couple questions here
Okay.
for, can I shoot these questions to you, because these come from a special lady, not a lady friend, a
Okay.
special lady. And here's some questions. Okay, these are for the ladies. This is for you to answer for the ladies. Last night, let's see, I asked about hospitality. Okay, here's a good one. How to cultivate, celebrate, and enhance physical beauty with limited time or money.
Okay. How to be
So
high
how does
maintenance without being high maintenance?
yeah, I suppose so.
Okay. Well, that's a really good question, and I would say that that stuff starts from the inside out, so like health. And I make a lot of beauty products in the kitchen that are edible. We're always like researching what do you eat for skin? What do you drink for this or whatever? So a lot of beauty secrets I feel like can be concocted in the kitchen. Like get yourself a good recipe of a recipe book of like how to make a shampoo, how to make a lotion, how to make because the stuff that you're going to buy in the store is full of toxins. You know, it could be very expensive, but it's got a lot of crap in it. So we try to minimize the chemicals that we put on our body. Um, Getting rid of crazy detergents and dryer sheets and like Tide Pods and tr go for the most crystal clear, unscented soap that you can. I mean, so we're starting at the basics of beauty, which is health, right? Being people shaped and youthfulness, like that is the uh building blocks of being attractive. It has nothing to do with like your makeup technique. That's like way beyond. So, um, I would say, you know, start focusing on eliminating as much like toxic chemicals out of your environment as you can. So we talked last night about growing up, you have to realize we're on a battlefield, like we're in the arena of a gladiator. There are forces working against us in a very real way, and we are in some kind of, you know, multi-pronged attack on our spirituality, on our bodies, on our minds. You know all about this and your channel, and you follow all of our channels and stuff. So we're tinfoil hats first and foremost, right?
Right.
And a lot of natural hippie stuff comes out of that too, like just kind of turning your back on the mainstream fashion, which is very unhealthy, right? Very like drug oriented and uh, promiscuity, nudity. Um, so yeah, health and beauty. I love that topic just because I want to stay alive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is whenever you someone mentions Tide Pods, I always laugh. I sent you my video about Pop has a cooking show. Let him cook, right?
Yeah.
I got some Tide Pods here and some dirty ass dishes. No, I also know that this isn't me. This is through me. This question. What about like clothing and fashion? Because I know that probably, I know ladies probably might have a question about this if they don't know, but it can, women are sort of barraged everywhere. You know, they're blitzed with images of all sorts of things as far as fashion goes and
Mhm.
health and how their bodies are supposed to be treated. But like, how does a woman, especially in her 20s, a young woman, 20s, 30s, 40s, cultivate a sense of like looking good and fashion without you know being like looking like a Jezebel. I suppose that's the only way to put it. I mean, that's like kind of everywhere. So
Yeah.
how do you do that, especially like with like little money and like and not having to use internet all the time? I suppose to get those things. How do you do that?
Okay, as far as clothes go, the first secret to dressing, and I've said this a couple of times, is that you need to get natural fiber clothes. So your clothes that you buy, you want them to be cotton, linen, wool, silk, these kinds of things, like maybe bamboo, but all of your like polyesters, all your acrylics, um, just synthetic fibers is really bad for your health and bad for your skin. And if you want to go woo woo, it's bad for your vibes. Like, you know, cloth and material has a vibration, and linen vibrates at a higher frequency than, you know, polyester. And so that's why and they used to have linen sheets in hospitals because they're actually like a healing material. So the things that you put on your body should be uplifting you and healing you instead of dragging you down and making you sick. Like, for instance, gym clothes. I mean, Jay makes fun of me, but I'm like, I don't um have any gym clothes that are like super tight, elastic yoga pants because they're all made of elastane and all these other chemicals, right? So I'm like going in 100% cotton baggy like pajama pants, but I don't want to get all of that material and all of the dyes even that can mess with you. And so we're looking at things like endocrine disruptors. So a lot of colognes, a lot of perfume. Unnatural scents have these endocrine disruptors that will make you sick, throw off your hormones. So that's what I'm saying. You have to realize we're in a war zone, we're in a battle zone, and everything can be weaponized against you, right? Including your shopping and like your desire to look hot or whatever. So, first of all, look for clothes that are natural fibers, number one, right? And I love clothes, so I'm always like getting inspiration from old movies or somebody I saw on the street or whatever. I'm like, I love that. And that might be a next frontier in my life is like learning how to sew because I've already learned how to make, cosmetics and everything from scratch. But maybe I'll start making my own clothes because that's another creative outlet that I can use. But I mean, I can share some good websites with you that I get the best cashmere or the best cotton that for affordable price if you want that.
Mm. Yeah, tell the ladies, tell the folks at
Okay.
home.
So my very favorite website for that is called quince.com, Quince. So I actually am wearing a Quince sweater right now, 100% organic cotton. I think this one was about $49. So once you get like the pieces that so they call it fast fashion, and that's all that stuff that you can order from Shein and Temu and, $5 dresses or whatever. That's the stuff that we're trying to avoid. We're trying to get like pieces that you can wear for a long time and that would go with a lot of things, but are also made of natural fibers. So that's the first building block in fashion. And I don't know, there's like that comes up on my TikTok a lot, and I guess I could ramble on about it forever, but just try not to show too much skin of one part. So if you like to wear shorts, then wear like something that doesn't show your cleavage. Or if you like to have something low cut, then cover your bottom. That's when you can look elegant without looking trashy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you do you like something my mom does and that she has taught my sister is that my mom always was a great designer and decorator in the house. She everything in the house is she stencils, she paints, she makes the drapes, she does all the fabric herself, she does all the upholstering of all the furniture, she does everything else and she taught my sister that. Do you think that that's also is that something you do or is that
That sounds awesome. I would love to learn how to sew. I
Mhm.
don't have a sewing machine and I don't have any patterns and anything like that, but I have altered a couple things, but that's like one hobby that I just have not got around to picking up and doing. But I thought of a quick tip. So a lot of and this is for older, like, family, young marrieds, but um it can be very easy when you have young kids to just throw on sweatpants and a sweatshirt, right? And you don't feel and look your best when you look sloppy like that. And so a hack, a beauty feminine hack, just get yourself a nice, they call them house dresses, right? And they're super comfortable. And a dress, in my opinion, is way more comfortable than sweatpants and sweatshirts. So like a nice cotton house dress for chores and stuff that you can just throw on. It's one piece. It doesn't have to look like fancy. And they have those on Quince too. So they got nice linen house dresses. So instead of the sweatpants combo, unless it's super cute and trendy, just get yourself a nice house dress to do your chores in. What do you
what
think?
about what about makeup? Because I know there's probably a lot of ladies who watch you probably it's a conscious thing with them that they're the way they present themselves is certainly aligned with their religious beliefs and there's a healthiness to that, especially as a reaction to the way that ladies are presented now. And do you think that is this? I mean, you talked about what the composition of makeup, but like, what do you think of? I mean, I'll give you an example. Like my sister is, she's beautiful. She's always been beautiful, and she knows how to dress. She knows how to put herself together. She's also, got a really awesome personality, and she's very successful, but she looks the part for her job, but she also likes to present herself well. Other ladies are can be conscious in a different way of being really modest with their makeup. Some women don't believe in makeup at all. Where do you stand with that?
Um, yeah, modesty is interesting because the intent behind it is to help us be more humble, right? And if it puffs up your pride to wear no makeup and flash that around, like I'm so pious, I wear no makeup, then how
Okay.
are you doing better than someone who is wearing makeup? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, good point. Okay. Okay.
So I I just think you should let ladies express their artistic creativity through outfits and makeup. I see nothing wrong with that, honestly. Um, I think it's an extension of, who you are and your creativity, what co colors you choose, or if you match it with your outfit or your purse. I don't have any problem um, with makeup as long as it's not toxic. And we did a show a long, long time ago called Beauty and the Beast System, where we put all our makeup and our cosmetics through this app that rates it, like good, bad, toxic, non-toxic. So we got rid of some things and we learned to buy other things. And so as long as it's not hurting you, I don't think there's any problem with like blue eyeshadow or
Yeah.
what just let people have fun, man. Why does it
Yeah.
have to be so serious? And I know a lot of the red pill guys are always like, makeup's a lie and you're trying to catfish and blah blah blah. And it's like just let people live a little bit, bro.
Right. Yeah, Hamlet has a thing. He insults Ophelia about women paint their faces. Of course, look what ends up happening to her. So it's pretty bad. Um, a
Yeah.
couple more questions. How one here is how do you as a woman lead? It says lead, express opinions, especially about oneself, about yourself, without being domineering.
How do you express yourself as a woman without being domineering?
Yeah, like especially how do you lead as a woman? How do you, if you're especially like if you had a wagey,
Uh-huh.
or you have meetings with men, or you're around men or something like that. How do you how do you like become a woman who can express opinions and be somebody to listen to, but also without being, I suppose, domineering is the question.
hmm That's a funny question because a man would never ask, how do I lead without being domineering?
That's right.
Or would they? I just don't, I think
I
that's
don't
such
think
an
so.
interesting female
Yeah.
question. So
Oh, there
that
we go.
just makes me think, women are conditioned to, you know, follow and take a step back and let somebody else take the lead. But when you are thrust into that position, you want, your girl to have a confidence to not crumble and
Hold on,
like,
Jamie. I lost your audio.
oh, can you hear me now?
Hear me?
I can hear you.
Was it? Well, I don't think it was me. Oh, well, yeah, we're being attacked by the ghouls and goblins again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Oh no.
Mm. Oh, there you go.
Okay, more goblins attacked us, but we're back. Smooth sailing. How do women lead without being domineering? This is such an interesting question because it's only something that a female mind. I want to lead, but I also want you to like me, and I want everyone to be in agreement on my leadership, right?
I suppose. I mean, but also, it's I don't know how to explain this, but I think guys know this. It's like let's say you're in a meeting at your job, and you're the if if it's a bunch of dudes, a bunch of men in there, and there's one woman and she has a strong opinion about something, it for some reason, it can come off as domineering. How does that? How do you avoid that, or how does that happen? I guess.
I would just say don't worry about that because guys can take a lot more than you think they can.
Mm,
Um, and just be prepared. So the confidence comes from knowing exactly what you are saying. And I have this problem too. Like, I don't want to open my mouth unless I'm 100% sure of what I'm saying. So I take uh, a lot of care to study and be educated on topics that I speak on, just because I don't want to be flapping my gums and sounding stupid. So I guess just for a girl, be prepared on what you're talking about beforehand. That will give you the confidence to just
that's a
insert
good answer.
yourself into the
Yeah,
situation. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I got a next question here.
Okay.
That was a great one. What does it mean to be ladylike?
Ladylike. It's a little bit laid back, isn't it? It's a little bit unbothered. It's a little unambitious. It's confident. It's feminine. It's definitely you take things a little slower. I don't, what do you, how would you describe a ladylike person?
Yeah, how about in terms of her or bearing her character?
Yeah. Um, Sovereign comes to mind and self-possessed.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're
Mm,
not letting people push you around and mold you into what they think you should be. You're trying to please, and, through our worldview, we're trying to please God first, and not men and not women, right? We don't do things for entire groups of genders. We're trying to be virtuous for humanity's sake, and so that God will be pleased with us, not men or women. Um, so yeah, ladylike is it's a little demure,
mm,
a little mysterious, right? You
mm.
don't say all of your secrets, you don't trauma dump on people. You have a little bit, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just the word demure. The first
Yeah.
time I heard the word demure, I was getting on a plane, and the the stewardess man,
Uh-huh.
this lady, I was seated, and this old lady passed me, like with this very fancy wig on, and like and lots of jewels, and I heard the stewardess man say, "Oh, look at her, she is so demure."
Yeah, there was a TikTok trend, very demure, very something else, but yeah, demure was going around. Put together.
Hmm.
So that goes back to dressing and grooming, right? There's nothing wrong with being dressed and groomed to the best of your ability. I see um, nothing incompatible with virtue and looking nice, having a smart outfit and your hair combed and your nails done and your skin clear. To me, that's ladylike because I mean, I think about this a lot. Like, if you if you really want to get down to it, a beautiful woman is like probably the most valuable thing in the world because you're not going to sell anything without a beautiful woman attached to it,
Hmm.
right? It's
Hmm.
throughout all of advertising. And if you want to get dark, like they kidnap people and sell them and make money off of them, and lots of, you know who I'm talking about, can make a millionaire out of a loser if you have a beautiful woman to do webcam for you or whatever. So
Yeah.
there is no end to the ways that a woman can be exploited. So she has to kind of rein it in and not let people take advantage of her. And that's part of
Mm.
being ladylike is having boundaries. Like I can't do these things with you. I can't s- give my body to you. I can't give my money to you if there's no commitment. I can't give all my time um, to somebody who's not serious, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think you're right. I think that for guys, especially now, many dudes have the especially it's a lot of times it's guys who have never talked to a woman or they've never even talked to a woman
Mhm.
who have this idea that of the perfect woman, the sort of trad woman that they are going to talk to, and the first time they talk to, they're going to figure out whether the woman has intentions with them and whether they're going to get married and have children, how do they stand politically or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's completely wild and insane because the fact is that when you're in a relationship, the guy is the protector and has all those roles, but to get there, you can't get around the fact that it's really the woman's decision whether you're going to be in the relationship in the first place. You
Mhm.
can't make a woman like you. You can't make a woman love you. You have to. You got to get in. It's the woman who's the gatekeeper.
Mhm.
I suppose. And so I
And
think that.
that's even more true for women. Like there's nothing you can do to make a man love you.
Mm,
Um, After a certain point, after he already sees who you are and all your virtues and all your good and bad, like there's not very much more that you can do in terms of like sacrifice and giving to make him love you more.
mm,
And nobody wants to do that. Men don't want to do that. Women do. That's not love. That's exhausting. Continually, like your partner's just always has this carrot on a stick, that you're trying to achieve so that you're good enough to be with them. Nobody wants to be in a relationship like that. So,
yeah.
um,
I got two more questions. Can I ask you two more questions here?
yeah, go ahead.
These are via myself. How do you from someone else? How do you cultivate healthy female friendships?
Mhm. Um, Good question. So, just fidelity, really. And so last night we talked about envy, right?
Yeah.
And that is a sickness, and that will destroy your relationships with other people. That will destroy your relationships with your friends. And so you have to get it out of yourself, and you also have to be careful for envy when choosing your friends. So, I mean, my mom, she told me my whole life, they don't like you because they're jealous. I'm like, no, mom, it's because I'm a dork, or it's because I said this, or it's because they just don't like me. I'm not likable, right? And the older you get, you're like, yeah, they probably didn't like me because they're jealous, you know? Once you learn, people can only have so many motivations for the way they act, and envy is a huge one. So if you can find a girl who has learned how to control her envy, that's going to be your best friend. Um, and it's funny because it's a lot of times the meanest girls have the most like gaggle of friends because they're very confident, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that it's easier for you to make friends now, or and that it was different than when you were like in your early 20s, or is it sort of the same? What do you think about that?
When I just gave up on any expectation, it's a very Buddhist Zen way of thinking about it. You can't control people or what if they like you or if they don't, or if they take your intentions the wrong way, or if they want to like you or not. So when I was a kid, yeah, that bothered me a lot. I spent a lot of time alone making mud pies behind the library because no one wanted to play with me, right? So
Yeah.
in elementary school, uh, I just didn't quite fit into anywhere. And then after homeschool, I just kind of stopped caring if you want to be my friend. And that's when the people come. And also, I just let people who are attracted to me come to me. So, those are the real ones that stick with you. It's not the people that you're going to have to pursue all the time and worry about if this relationship is solid or if it's going somewhere. It's another part of life where you just have to relax. And if someone
So
doesn't
nonchalance again.
Again,
Yeah.
yeah. And, some people are only going to be your friend for a season.
Mm,
Not everyone you meet is going to be a lifelong chum, okay? Those only come around once in a lifetime. I still have lifelong friends that nobody could replace that person. Um, and like, of course, you can make good and best friends along the way. But some people you're just meant to know them for a couple years and then they, go on with their lives or what they're doing or whatever. Some people you try them out and it just wasn't a good fit. I've definitely had girlfriends where I thought, oh wow, we could be super best friends forever. And then, circumstances happen, you don't feel as comfortable, you don't feel the same way anymore. So, that's just one of those things that you have to like let it come in waves and fall away naturally as it comes and goes.
Well, what is it that cultivates that kind of lifelong friendship with women? Because for men, a lot of times it's hardship,
Uh-huh.
hardship and distress
Yeah.
uh, can is really what call like think of the bonding on a sports team, for example, when you're younger, or guys, in war, or any of the kind of situations that come out of that as a metaphor for guys. I mean, struggling together can really create a bond for dudes. So, what is it for ladies that kind of does that?
Well, that's because of vasopressin. I didn't know if you knew that, but so that's the hormone that keeps you men, wanting to stay together with your pack, with your unit, with your squad. You've overcome, like you said, these hardships. You've gone on tours together or war or whatever. That actually is chemically you're bonded to them through vasopressin. Um,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so women do their best bonding through oxytocin. Being together, sharing like secrets, hard details of their life, like going back into the lore and sharing those memories. That is a good way to bond with women if you're a girl. Um, Hard times too, but yeah, so I had a good story about that.
Well, because guys, and I've had this a lot of my life. Like, you can be around dudes who you have nothing in common with, and they can be a very wide range of guys. But if you are struggling together, especially in really, like with physical discomfort, then you have something, and you're almost not in pain. Like, the pain of whatever the physical thing is kind of goes away, and it's fun. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, like, look,
Like boot camp or something.
like boot camp, or like, for me it was like playing lacrosse, bro. And like, or going to when I was a teenager, it was like going to sports every day. We required athletics every day and going out no matter what. And it was raining and muddy, and and you just got a couple pads on. You're getting beat on by older dudes, who are hitting you with a titanium stick, and you're bloody and stuff. But like, there's something that's cool about that, and it's like you get off and you just laugh it off, and
Hmm.
that's the kind of prepares you, I think, for life. And ladies, I think, obviously have different versions of that.
You know what's so funny? Is women don't want to be friends with someone else who's, oh, that's what I was going to tell you. So I bond with people very quickly if we hate the same thing rather than if we
Yeah,
like the same thing, because it's like, okay, everyone likes ice cream. Yeah, you love ice cream. I love, oh, you love that. But if you really hate the thing that I really hate, then it's like, okay, now we could talk because
that's a good point.
yeah.
That's a good point. That's probably the opposite with guys. I mean, there's a great Family Guy skit where, like, there's two ladies and they sit down, and one of the ladies is like, "Oh, I love your hair. It's really good. Did you get it at a discount?" And the other lady's like, "Oh, your dress is so great. It makes you look a little less fat." And they
Yeah.
hate each other. And then the dudes sit down at the table, and he goes, "Hey, cool tie." And he goes, "Thanks." And it's like, guys, we know how to be friends.
Oh,
It's just like,
yeah.
you know,
Um, I don't know, man. It's a hard world to navigate because envy and insecurity is going to ruin a lot of people's relationships. So with women, yeah, I guess honestly, the first thing they're looking for is, are you a threat to my situation? What I got going on over here, are you going to disturb that in any way? So once you can disarm a woman in that way, no, I'm not here for your man, your kid, your money, and like to take from you, um, then it's a lot easier to get, women to warm up to you.
that's a great point. Can I ask you? I got one last question here, and
Okay.
this one's a packed question here. What is a woman's role in the church?
Oh goodness. What I mean, not all of them, but so I'm gonna have or not Pastor, Father Vladimir on um talking about this very thing because I think it's pretty clear. I mean, women do a lot for the church. They just are not priests and deacons and readers, right?
Yeah,
Um,
certainly. Hmm.
but if you actually go to church, you will realize that there is no church without women because they are bringing the babies, they are bringing the food, they are bringing the husbands, they're bringing the music, they're singing in the choir, they're cleaning it, they're tending the candles, they're working behind the desk and selling the icons, they're sweeping the floor, they're vacuuming, they're washing, they're cleaning the toilets, they're cleaning up the baby diapers. I mean, what and any type of job that is available, women are doing it. So
Yeah.
I just think it's really funny that they think women don't do anything in the church just because you're not a priest, but there's 101 other roles to fill other than, priest, deacon, reader, right?
Yeah, I think that in general, men count on women to be organized. Women are great women tend to be organized. They have plans for things. Now, this can you can get into the nuances of that, but plans and organization, at least in my experience, tend to be things that I rely on women for, and that men have a different role. I mean, you men have a different sort of organization and are more highly I don't know, can be more highly focused on other things. But in terms of, I guess, planning and organization, and comfort, right? Those are things that men rely on women for.
hmm
So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, in our church, they explain it very well. Christ was a man, and the priest represents, a Christ figure, and to put a woman in that place is kind of like going against actual history. We're not just doing mystery plays based on woo-woo and space opera. This is like something that happened at a certain point in time. It's a physical manifestation of God, incarnate as a man, which I don't have a problem with that. Um, so there's very good reasons why the priest is a man. And he represents the father and the head, and he's supposed to be protecting all of us and responsible for all of us and supporting all of us like a father would do.
Yeah. If I think about it in terms of teaching, in terms of lecturing or teaching, I think that I'm terrible at paperwork and plans and you know t- turning in the things that the powers that be want you to turn in, those kinds of things, or even time management as far as those are concerned. But
Mhm.
time management in terms of running the actual class with students is my strong suit, or the content, the content, or teaching, or ideas, or relationships with people and one on one, and looking at essays and all the sort of boring things that I do in a job. But I've just found that most of the men that I've ever worked with, are also have they tend to be like me, not have an emphasis on the things that are required as the required as part of your job, and that ladies tend to excel at. They're very good at that. They're very good. The ladies are always good at like running meetings and having the things there and having the paperwork and filling in the things that the state or the university or whoever wants you to fill in. They're very good at that. Not to say they're not good at the other things too, but just the guys kind of put those they kind of put those off, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, behind the scenes stuff, administration stuff, I mean, women are excellent at that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think as any man that excels usually has a great woman, behind him doing that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
helping him out, right, behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And what his job is to not let her get lost in the shuffle and just treat her like some kind of appendage. But he has to honor her and be like, I couldn't have done it without her. Look where I am, but this is only because we did this. So that's kind of his challenge is to be a little more humble and acknowledge that a lot of people helped you to get where you are.
Yeah, look at Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. That's the dark version of that.
Uh,
But but that certainly is the case. Harold Bloom says that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have the strongest marriage in all of Shakespeare. Of course, it leads to what it does in the play, but but I think that's in many ways it's a great example of that. I suppose.
yeah. When you
Well,
say ladylike, I thought poise too, right?
yeah,
And that comes from inner strength and confidence and you know, having sovereignty, like again, over your own body. I don't let lots of people use me in this way, in that way, and you start to build up these muscles of, just like believing in yourself and you don't have to please everybody. So I am a recovering like level 10 doormat people pleaser. Right.
yeah.
Until I met Jay and I'm like, "Oh, you don't have to do everything everyone tells you to do." Okay.
Mm, mm.
So,
Well, I know there's going to be some fellas who have questions about meeting women, and so let's look at this from your perspective. Like
okay.
when when there's a single man and a single woman, and they're in the same place, what does a woman expect? What does she expect of a man? How can she let the man know she's interested? We all know this, but for the people that don't or have trouble with this, how does she let the man know that she's interested? What's the right way to do that? And how does she let him know that she's not interested? And what's a great thing for a guy to say? I'll give the diplomatic thing, by the way, earlier with the spider guy. I'll
Mhm.
give the guy credit. He had an interest,
Oh, well,
and
at least
he
you went
and
for
he
it.
shared and he shared it.
Yeah.
So at least he did that, because the problem, I think, is that a lot of guys who aren't men yet are stifled.
Hmm.
They're stifled because of their expectations of women. They don't talk to women. They have an idea of what a woman should be, and it's totally, it's just non-realistic. So, what's a good way you think for this to happen?
Well, Spider Bro, at least he went for it, right? At least like you took a shot and you missed. So I had to go to tour guide school at one point in San Francisco, and they were teaching us these techniques, how to, be likable, how to be approachable, how to be confident, how to not be scared to talk to people. And one of our assignments was just like, go ask strangers for something. And get used to being told no. Get used to being told, who the heck are you? Get used to being like in a situation that they might say no, and you don't crumble when they look at you funny. You just like go on with your day and accept the L or whatever, right?
That's almost like a New York City school of being a person, right? Most people are not going to give you any time of day. They're going to say no. They're going to tell you to, kick rocks or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the way most people are. But you also have to learn that as a person.
And
You
you
have
have
to
to learn it's
learn,
not going to kill you to get a negative reaction from somebody.
right?
You can always apologize. You can always talk to them again. It's not the end of the world. And I know you have to tell kids this because their hormones are like seriously making them insane, right? So the kids you're working with, they're going through puberty. They're going through all of these like life issues. They're going through growth spurts and hormonal imbalance, all of the whole thing. And apart from letting them sleep as much as you can, um, when they're going through,
Mhm.
you have to remind them that it's not that serious. It's not the end of the world. Life does go on. Um, so how do you let a boy know that you're interested without being overbearing?
Yeah. I mean, or how do you be honest with them? How do you?
Okay. Honestly, you just be available and single. That's all you can do as a woman. He's going to have to, if you want the kind of guy that is going to make a good partner and a good relationship, he's going to have to be the one pursuing you. You can be there, you can be open, you can be available, but as soon as you start going the other way, I think the dynamic starts to um shift a little bit, and you can only match his level of enthusiasm about the relationship. Does that make sense? If you go
Yeah.
above it, he's going to lose interest. He's going to be like, well, if I don't have to put in that much effort to get her, then she's probably not that good of a catch anyways. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's how
Yeah.
guys think. So they're always trying to get the best girl, right? And the best girl um is not chasing men because all the men are chasing her.
Yeah. I certainly think there's something to, there's people know a thing about guys who are mean or uninterested, and it really is true. It's like the more you every dude knows this. The more you don't pay attention to the girl who's interested in you, the more she pays attention to you until up to a certain point.
Yeah. Well, this is a tactic that they teach in, manosphere school or whatever.
Oh,
The
okay.
negging, and they're like, especially if she's really pretty, then treat her worse than all her friends because she's used to being treated better. So if you're the one who's treating her worse, you're putting this power dynamic over her. And this is not how we want to treat people, guys. This, like we talked about last night, we're
Yeah.
not here 48 laws of power and to manipulate everybody like a freaking chess piece in your
Yeah.
life.
I think it's more in terms of teasing. It's more in terms of think how you were when you were little. And I think that we can use a lot of that sort of this is something just that people used to just get to know, but obviously it's for
Yeah.
people who are having problems, and that's a real thing. But I think that for guys, teasing is a big thing. Like there's a I remember watching Martin Lawrence years ago, and he was talking about, his girlfriend said that she said I love you, and he said, Psh, yeah, you are. But
Yeah.
but see, that's funny and it's fun, and he followed, and he obviously she knew that he cared about it, that he cared about her, and then they were in a relation. Then they got into a stronger relationship. But there's something to that, to the nonchalance and to teasing. So manipulation is different from teasing.
Yeah.
Manipulation is has a sinister and dark sort of ownership power
Yes.
dynamic to it, which is
So
very weird.
teasing and flirting is one thing, negging and trying to put somebody down is another, right? And you can
Yeah.
go a long way with a little bit of teasing and flirting. Good nature, like you don't want to take something that you know she's sore about and tease her about it and make her more upset. So
Yeah.
but that's the thing guys have to learn. Like you're gonna put your foot in your mouth and you're gonna make a girl cry and you're gonna say something effed up and she, like you just
Yeah.
have to live and learn. And a lot of young people these days, they get so much of their worldview through like statistics, and just influencers and podcasters, and like you can say anything with with a statistic almost, and it's like that's just one data point in a whole sea of nuanced thinking that you have to do when it comes to relationships. And so when you're talking about like, these statistics like women initiate more divorces than men, well, that's only one, like I said, one data point. It doesn't mean that they're responsible for the collapse of Western civilization. It just means that they are getting divorced more.
Yeah. What about? I mean, I think that if a dude thinks that he can comment on or criticize, for instance, a woman's physical appearance, like her weight, things she can't control, even her dress sense or her, and especially her character, those are sort of tend to be things that are not going to get you a date, right? Or you're not going to, I mean, to put it lightly, like those might be things that a husband and wife can talk about, but that's between them. And a guy who is, let's say, who's been on a date with a girl and he's about to go on a second date and he comments on what she's wearing for the date, that might be fine. It might be something that the guy believes, but it's not. If that's the case, it's kind of already over. It's not going to help you to criticize, what she's wearing. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Nothing
it's
good
like
will come of these
psychotic.
comments. Like, just
Yeah.
keep it to yourself, right?
Yeah. I don't like that you're on the beach in this scantily clad bikini. Would you like to go out on a date? No.
No.
Psychotic guy stalking a woman. But I guess a lot of people don't know that. I think that I was watching Father Moses last night, his video, one of his videos, and he reminded me. I was reminded watching it that character, the word character, the etymology of character is implies something etched. You know, for a man, it's something that's etched or into hewn rock. This is something that you have to work your whole life to develop a character, and
Mhm.
your character should be centered on how you please God, a reflection of God. But that's also important in terms of it also shows it sort of shines itself through your relationships with women and through your relationships everywhere you go. And your reputation as a man is it is important. Your reputation, how you present yourself, and people's perception of you. So you were talking last night. You made some good points about how and when we first started tonight about how this sort of the idea of being cringe is there are types of it, and it used to be this kind of thing like my idea of it is like imagine you're at a wedding or something, or you're at a party and you're dancing, and the person who is self-conscious about their dancing in a group of people looks self-conscious and kind of unattractive. The person who is you can have a dude who is the sweatiest, fattest, not very good looking guy, but if he's having a good time at a party and he's like dancing and that's a person you want to be around. There's a kind of infectious energy with that.
Mhm.
But now that sort of metaphor is kind of ruined because of the TikTok dancing. Everybody's dancing all the time. There's too much dancing. But in real life situations, I think that sort of holds true. But you also have to be aware. You have to kind of be yourself, but you also have to balance that with how you're perceived with other things that you do. And usually those are nuanced things with guys. The little things that show your character. For instance, I think that people who lie, especially in little ways, are this should be something to be avoided, obviously. And we all kind of, I think one of the things that the guys need to have friends and to be like a popular person or a well-liked person is the ability to tell a story. You have to make people laugh. You have to sort of lose yourself and be self-deprecating, and you use hyperbole and you exaggerate things. But if you lie about little things, like for instance, you know, where not where you've been, because guys also don't like being asked where they've been or what they've been doing. In general, like to be questioned by people about because of the implication of what it can have, but also like just little things in terms of lying, like about times or about where you're going or who you were with, and it's obvious that you weren't. It's an obvious lie that is obviously disprovable in the person's mind. Those little things are weird. They show people to be untrustworthy. I think that's a big problem with people. What do you think?
Um, yeah, being honest is huge. And I was just thinking, you know, I I'm a really bad liar. I hate lying. And it's because I don't want somebody to be in a position over me that I feel like you said, I don't want to answer to somebody and feel like I have to lie. So if somebody's got me in a position where I feel like I have to be dishonest, I hate that. Does that make sense? And I will tell the truth so that just because I don't want you over me. How do I
Yeah.
even explain what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to answer to you and I don't want to have to feel like I have to lie to you,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. What about? Let's see. I've
I
got a
can't
thing on
really
here.
explain that very well.
No, that's good.
You're giving your power away when you feel like you have to lie to someone. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's kind of like being held accountable by people that you're not accountable to.
yeah.
I think a lot of people lie in those situations. It's kind of like it maybe a good example would be like when you're driving in the car and there's a cop behind you. You, I don't know if you do this, but I automatically start coming up with what I'm doing, what I'm going to say to the cop, and excuses, even though I'm just going to work or I'm going to the gas station,
Yeah.
because I automatically feel like I have to lie, like because I'm doing something, but
Right.
I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
Does
So
that make
we
sense?
all feel like we have to lie to authority in some way.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
don't like lots of people having authority over to me, so I don't want to lie to them.
Hmm. Yeah, I wrote here questions. Oh yeah, I wrote down. She wrote down questions, questioning, and question marks. This is from me. I've got a thing, especially in terms of teaching, about questioning, because young people tend to think that the act of questioning or just the idea of a question itself is somehow virtuous uh, or conveys deeper learning or deeper thought, when it doesn't oftentimes, because it depends on how you question. The questions that are valuable are deeper questions about grand plans or motivation or the meaning of a text or the meaning of what happens in the world. And it's important, like you just said, to question authority or to question people's, in a big sense, people's motives. But the idea of asking people questions in a smaller sense tends to be something that's vapid and annoying to me. For instance, I was going to ask you about, in terms of relationships, like, I think that texting has come to the kind of end point in terms of its usefulness in terms of relationships, and like when people are trying to be in a relationship with each other. We've now come to the other end of the arc, where at a long time ago, when texting first developed, and for the longest time it's been like, yeah, but now you can talk to people and you don't have to talk to them on a phone. It's a sort of safety net, and also you can get deeper things out of texting. But now we're at a point where there's a whole rigmarole with texting people, and a lot of people don't know how to text in terms of like getting a new relationship. Everything is questionable in the tone of the text, even though it's just a few words. And this is where phone calls are important, or talking to people in person is important. But like, I have friends who will just like, if I've got one, I've got one specific friend who, sorry, he's not going to watch this. He's one of my lifelong friends who I've told the other fellas, watch this, and I'll put something in the group chat or whatever, and his response will be a question every time. He will only write questions back with a question mark. Like, you can be like, yeah, I'm thinking of going to see this new movie, and he'll be like, why are you thinking that?
Yeah.
And it's his attempt to engage, which is weird, because I'm like, you're not an autistic guy. I don't know why you just say something normal. But this is
Uh-huh.
sort of taking the place. This is taking the place of any sort of deeper, I don't know, sort of a deeper thinking process. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, you made me think about that term called sea lioning.
What is that?
It's like asking a question in a trying to goad somebody and in a disingenuous way. Um, yeah, you'll just have to look it up the examples of that. But
Dead ass.
questions can be, yeah, annoying, and especially like, okay, in the te context of if you're a guy trying to, rizz up a girl, 1,000 questions definitely is not how to do it. You want to stick to lighthearted memes. When do you want to meet up? Plans, uh, compliments, jokes, inside jokes. Um, you don't want her to feel like she's on an interview. Like you said, that they want to plan out the whole life on the first date or the first meeting, and that's just not how you get to know people.
Type shit. Do you know that expression?
No.
That's another one. We're talking about our expressions, our Zoomer expressions. Type shit. That means, okay, that's what's up.
Oh,
Dead
okay.
ass.
That ass.
Clock it.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, yo, handshaking and hugging,
Uh-huh.
dudes. First of all, hugging is out of control. Do you
Yeah.
remember when the hug first became like a grand cultural movement with Obama? Do you remember they were like the bro hug is a new thing?
No,
Yeah,
you made of that bro hug. I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. That's out of control. I think that dudes are doing too much hugging. I think that the handshake is the classical Roman handshake
Uh-huh.
still going to be the thing that dudes need to develop. If you look at people who, by the way, have a good handshake, if you're a guy, because a thing that can happen with guys handshaking is you don't grip the other guy's hand fast enough and they end up gripping you loosely like this,
Hmm.
and then you have to, if that happens, here's a tip, dudes, if that happens, if you've given a guy kind of a fey handshake because they gripped your hand too long, grab their arm with your left hand and
Yes.
push your arm in
Yeah.
so you grip it hard. Or start off with two great people that do great handshakes. Corey from Pawn Stars looks like he does a weird handshake, but when he goes in, he starts up here with his hand spread, so he's going to go in hard for the handshake. It's impossible to not get a good handshake. And the other is, of all people, the Trump handshake. You notice that when shakes somebody's hand, he's always in a receiving mode like this.
Uh-huh.
So the other person is forced to turn their hand to grip it hard like
Oh
that.
yeah.
So then he's got a good handshake. That's a good handshake. But hugging should only be reserved for dudes that you're tight with,
Yeah.
you know? And, I think that's, you can dap people up. I think it's cool to have a specialized handshake with your homeboys, but you don't have to go around hugging every person, especially that you work with. You don't have to give them a hug all the time. Just shake their hand or pound it, or, you don't have to just, the physical contact tends to be too much.
You know what this reminds me of is like I once had a book by Emily Post, the manners lady of like the early 1900s,
Yeah.
and it was like literally like this thick.
Yep.
And the type text was so tiny, and it was 1,000 pages of manners,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And just all of this to help you feel more comfortable in a social situation, right? So you have,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that is part of the human experience. We all have to find our way to lessen our anxiety in a crowd, in a group, growing up with our parents. Um, And back in the olden days, it was like learn how to act, to learn your manners, what is appropriate. And in that way, I think it was good because it takes a lot of pressure off when you know exactly what is expected of you in a given situation.
Right.
It's not about being hoity-toity, it's just about being comfortable interacting with other people.
My mom has the hoity-toity example of that. It's Amy Vanderbilt's Etiquette,
Oh
which is
yeah, yeah.
also that thick, and that sort of thing works. I mean, that's good. That it to me, that's it's kind of like Strunk and White for grammar. If you're, which is a tip, if you're a person out there who has to write anything ever, get a copy of Strunk and White. Strunk and White gives you everything you'll ever need, grammatically speaking, like with how to write a letter or write an email to a person or how to be formal in terms of language.
Hmm. And it's all about trying to put the other person at ease, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we've been covering tonight, like how to be comfortable in your own skin in a social situation and how that puts other people at ease. Because our vibes, as you would call it in Gen Z, is actually our electromagnetic field that is like a torus spiral going like this through our heart in the center of our person. And it extends, surprise, surprise, 6 feet outwards. So people can feel your vibes. And when they're off, when they're happy, when they're sad, and be attracted to you or repelled by you, depending on how you are.
I think it's about putting people at ease. For men, I think it also tends to be about how to establish a hierarchy and how to know your place in social situations, and how to, not just how to dominate every situation. If you're a person, if you're a person who dominates every situation through, like Sam says, lies, cheating, manipulation, stealing, gaslighting, and flexing, then that's cool. But I think that younger people, especially without the practice of this in life, have a hard time understanding hierarchy in situations. The example that I give to students, and I did this today, was the likability. We talked about a little bit about the likability thing last night. But if you are an 18-year-old guy and you're not going to go into college, you're going to go into the workforce, and let's say you're going to go and you're going to be a welder. Well, when you go and they're paying you to be an apprentice, and you're going to start making more money as a teacher than a teacher, your first year of learning how to weld, they're giving you something big. You're not going to have college debts. You're going to go into a job that is firm, it's constant, you can support your family. But the thing that they're going to have to deal with is dealing with usually a salty boomer who's over them. And they have to learn how to shut up. They got to learn how to shut up, how to be on time, how to listen and learn from the guy and ask for help in ways that don't make you too much of a, I'll say, a simp or a weakling, but also show that you're sort of prostrating yourself in your career because you want to learn from a person. A lot of that's through hardship and through making mistakes, but also it's the same with making mistakes. I think that we all do movies, and we cover movies, and one of the themes that I think comes out of a lot of movies is I just covered On the Waterfront. Shameless self plug. Please, everybody, go and watch my latest stream on the Waterfront Zone of Interest on my channel, Bazed Analyzer. On the Waterfront, in movies like Rocky, show that it's not necessarily how you win every time. We're not going to win every situation, especially as men. Most of life is actually losing at points, but it's like getting in a fight. If a guy has ever been in a fight, and I think that really guys, I know Jay's talked about this. Like you've got to you've got to go through life in a way where you have to prove yourself, sometimes even physically. And you're not going to. I've been in a bunch, and you're not going to win every fight, but you've got to be able to get up with some sort of honor, some sort of dignity, and you got to keep going. And that's where a victory can occur. The ability to get beaten and still get up, because a lot of people get beaten and they don't get up.
Mhm.
And they go through life like a total loser. Not everybody's the only guy that's going to win. Like Mike, okay, Mike Tyson had a great thing about this because I watched this interview where they asked him if you could fight anybody in the world, who would it be? And he said Achilles.
Mhm.
And I thought this was like a mind blowing answer because he didn't give somebody alive. He offered up the mythical, Iliad Achilles, because he said that there was a point in his life where he realized, and this is something that nobody can relate to, that he realized that there was a point where he could fight anybody on earth and win. He could literally fight anyone.
Mhm.
And then he realized at the end of it that there was no one left to fight, and that he had been fighting himself the whole time. This was a constant battle with himself, and this is like how humility occurs. But guys don't if you hardly ever win, you've got to win by perseverance and through struggle and making friends and being likable, because a lot of people, especially young people, especially I'll say a lot of young, especially a lot of young white boys are can be very pathetic and be very kind of Gumby in situations. You mentioned earlier about the ability to say no, and
Mhm.
saying no is something that it really does take a that's something with dads, like dads know how to say no. Great
Mhm.
dads know how to say no. They know how to say no to a person asking for change. They know how to say no to people trying to scam them on the phone. They know how to say no to their kids. They know how to say no to a deal that's not right. And that's a very, very difficult thing for a man to do. But men have got to be able to know how to say no, when to say no, and to say no firmly and make it last that one time. It's got to be no, and that's it.
Mhm.
And I think that's a very difficult thing for guys to sort of understand.
Oh, for girls too. Yeah, peer pressure is crazy, and that's the only way you're going to end up being demure and ladylike and sovereign is that you have a good enough idea of what right and wrong is, and you are able to say, no, I'm not participating in these things that do not serve me. I do not agree with them. I'm not doing this just for you. Um, and a lot of that happens to be, sexual things when you're young. So learning how to say no to that is very important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, peer pressure. Yeah, I mean, peer pressure for dudes is a big thing, especially as a teenager.
And I'm about to watch this show called Adolescence on Netflix. Have you heard of that?
No.
So it's all the rage now. It's getting a lot of buzz because it's about a like a middle school or incel who goes on a rampage. It's kind of based on a true story.
Hmm.
Rampage because he was radicalized by, like incel, manosphere, red pill type misogyny stuff. And part of the story, I haven't watched it yet, but is about like girls sending nudes to boys in school. And that is something you're gonna like have to just learn how to say no. No, I'm not doing this. You can ask me 100 times, you can ask me 1,000, you can tell me you love me, all of that. If you love me, you wouldn't ask for that. But no, 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 I'm not doing um these things that degrade me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's insane. Um, Something I just wrote down here is how to enter a room. This is very specific, but
Okay. Yeah.
how to enter a room. And I learned this. I learned this of all places when I was at drama school when I trained as in classical acting for 2 years in England, and we had this old man. The first week of training, who taught us that we were you listen, you fucking wankers. None of you know how to walk. You don't know how to stand, and you don't know how to enter a room. Watch this. And I thought, yeah, right. And this dude showed me how to enter a room. This was specifically for like an audition, but it's how to enter a room in any situation. And that is, he gives you, I can't demonstrate here, but he gives you two situations. One is that if the door opens this way, the doors swing this way, there's one way to enter a room, which is you walk in with your left foot. I'm walking in, so I'm walking in this way, and the door opens this way, which automatically forces me to show my back to the people I'm walking into the room with and to turn around and shut the door behind me. But the way I always enter a room, especially when I'm teaching, is I open the door forcefully and I walk in with my right foot. So if the door opens, I walk in and they see my face. I have entered the room.
Mm-hmm.
I've entered the room. I'm now here. Everybody, get ready for
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Start taking notes or listen, and that's for any situation. Make yourself a presence in a room. It doesn't have to be like Kramer entering a room or something, but enter a room so that you're open, so that people can see your body, your face, and you're there. Instead of having to, I got to turn around and close the door, and now I'm awkward.
Right.
The awkward thing also leads me on to something about ladies from a man's perspective, and this is awkwardness and quirkiness. This is kind of you saw this a lot in '90s movies with the quirky girl,
Mm-hmm.
but generally speaking, this is an unattractive or a turnoff for guys. You know, Women who are described as quirky. If you're a guy and you have a girlfriend who's gonna put you onto a date with somebody, and they describe her as quirky, it's probably it's probably not gonna work,
Yeah.
because the quirky girl is the same type of girl who is this is in no, people. I want you to notice next time you watch a movie where there is a female character wearing pants, how often she'll stick her hands in her pants, like in her pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Women, and it's a thing, and it ends up being this kind of quirky thing where women are walking around with their hands in their pocket. That seems very specific, but you'll see what I mean when you watch it.
Uh,
And women who are quirky also tend to go over into this. I know people will relate to this. They will go over into a trying to be a man in humorous situations, and it also goes then it goes into innuendo, then it goes too far, then it goes into crass. And there's nothing wrong with, I'm not talking about women being funny or humorous, but it tends to be what we kind of mentioned earlier, which is like this overbearing personality trait that tends to be this quirky thing. Have you noticed that? What do you think about that?
Um, you just made me think of like how a lot of female comedians who have a lot of potential to be funny, but they just go straight into crass because they want to like fit in with all of the guy comedians who are talking about crass stuff, but
Yeah.
it doesn't come across the same way when it comes from a woman. It's like more shocking and more like, oh, why did you say that? Um, I don't know why guys can get away with it better, but yeah, it's definitely more noticeable when it's a woman trying to act masculine. So I think
Mm,
that's what you're describing, right?
yeah. Yeah. It's also women cussing, women cursing,
Uh-huh.
or again, very specific, women cussing, smoking cigarettes, and drinking bottled beer. Every movie has women drinking bottled beer. Oh, I'm drinking my bottled beer. And when you go, if you go to a bar, if you ever go to bars, I don't go to bars, but if I go to a bar and there are women drinking bottled beer, there's nothing wrong with I'm not talking about in every situation. I'm talking about a specific type of person. But women, especially who cuss, there's nothing wrong. I don't give a shit. I don't care about women cussing, but a lot of times it can be crass, and women don't know how to cuss, and it's forced. And this also goes for young dudes, young people, and it can be people my age. A guy who doesn't know how to cuss is very, get out of here. Like,
Mhm.
there's a thing with like over cussing in situations, or like, yeah, I can't wait to get that motherfucking cheeseburger. It's like, what? There's no need to cuss in that place. A lot of times cussing comes out of it has to be called for in the moment, or you're hanging with the fellas and that's fine, whatever, or um, or it's funny, because it seems uncalled for at the time. But that's dudes with dudes. With ladies and stuff, I think that especially in social situations, it's determined by the people around you and by what is going to be sort of acceptable to people, balanced out with forcing your own personality through.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? What do you think about that?
Well, swearing is not very ladylike, is it?
All right. Excuse me
But
for cussing too, folks. I'm
well,
sorry.
I
All
mean,
right.
the well-placed F word or whatever you're trying to get across in use very sparingly.
Yeah.
It can be um useful in the moment sometimes, but yeah, as a general rule, you're going to want to be communicating without using, a lot of profanity for guys and girls, just because we want to live in a nice, civilized society, right?
Yeah. Dudes often also, you mentioned last night, we were talking a little bit about drinking, and I mentioned how, if you're a guy like in your 40s and you're still going out to bars every night, that's not a good sign. Your life is probably not going very well, especially with alcohol. Alcohol can be so destructive, and it can be such a depressant for people. It makes you out of control, and there is nothing worse for guys around another dude than someone who's out of control. Being out of control is very off-putting and unreliable. But at the same time, you don't want to be somebody who's a wet blanket, who's a total stiff. You know, with me, like, I don't drink, but if I go somewhere and somebody offers me a drink, if I go, I'm fine at a cocktail party not drinking, because I'm comfortable in myself. I don't have to have anything in my hands, and I'm totally comfortable. And if somebody asks me if I want to drink, I'm like, nah, I'm cool. And then if they try and force it, then they make themselves sort of look like, why don't you want to drink? And
Mhm.
then I have to be like, look, dude, it's the, I'm glad you're having your first beer or whatever, but I'm cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
Jay has to do that every time because he doesn't drink either.
mhm,
He has to kind of explain like all the time why he's not drinking.
yeah,
It's just his own health issue. It's not because he's being a weird Baptist or whatever.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, drinking, we covered this a little bit last night. So one of the most attractive things you can be when you're going out in a social setting is in control of yourself, right? You don't use it for guys and girls. Like no one wants a slobbering drunk girl sitting on all your boyfriend's laps and being all kissy face and smoking
yeah,
cigarettes, blowing it everywhere. It's like like um and nobody wants a guy who doesn't know where he is. He lost his wallet, his keys, he can't figure out where his phone's at. He can't pay the bill. Like, where's the tax?
yeah. That's
It's like no one wants to take care of you like that. And it's very attractive to a girl to be able to, they say, turn off your brain for a minute when you're
Mm,
going out on a date with a guy or just in a social setting, to not be worried and anxious about every little thing because we already have a way higher neuroticism than men do, right?
mhm,
Just
yeah.
because we're in more danger. So we're taking in a lot more sense data. We're picking up on a lot more like micro facial expression. We're looking for like the exits. We're looking for uh threatening men, right? So if you're with a nice big man who's also intimidating but sweet at the same time, and he's sober and he's got money and he knows like how to get home and like where we are, and where we're going, then you can just enjoy life for a second and like look around and be in public. And you're gonna have a lot more fun as a man with your lady if you are in control.
Yeah, that's there's something that comes out of this. Have you ever had somebody say to you, or you've heard people say, like, "Don't let me drink." Oh, we're going to the thing. Don't let me do this. This is a thing that I think probably everybody comes across. Well, if I have a friend or if I'm somewhere and some dude says to me, "Don't let me do something," get the
Mhm.
fuck. I'm sorry to cuss. Get the fuck out of here. That's not. I'm not your babysitter. Stop being. Excuse me again, folks, but that guy's got to stop being a little bitch. You've got to be in control of yourself. I'm not here to babysit anybody. If you're a grown man, if you're any man, nobody needs to stop you from doing something. Oh, make sure you take my keys away. No, no, that's
Mhm.
on you. That's on you. That's on you to do that. I'm not here to. If I'm somewhere to have a good time, I'm gonna have a good time, and I'm gonna care about. I'm gonna be accountable to myself. Um,
But you also, like you said, you don't want to be the wet blanket and the stick in the mud. And so you want to be somebody who's flexible, who can go with the flow, who can change plans at the last minute, who's not freaking out if you're late. That's my fault. Like, I hate being late. And so I'm always the one like standing by the door dying inside while people are like
yeah.
still getting ready. But um,
Well, lateness is funny because depending on the situation and depending on what you're doing, you certainly have to be aware of what other people have going on, and you have to be flexible. But if your lateness really to me only matters if you're a person who is habitually late to something social, if you have things or you have a thing to do and you have a person who is always late to those things to the point where everyone's waiting on them all the time, that's another out of control kind of chaotic thing. Another thing with drugs and alcohol is that it's very popular for people to say things like, "I'm an alcoholic, so I don't, I got to watch what I drink," or whatever. Well, just a word of wisdom from an old wise wizard here to the folks at home. Alcoholics and drug addicts never will say that. They don't ever say, "Don't let me do something," or "I'm this." In
mhm,
fact, they're probably you don't really see alcoholics at bars. Alcoholics and drug addicts tend to do drugs and alcohol by themselves, especially the older they get.
mhm.
And they try and hide those things because many times, especially if they're functional, they try and keep a semblance of a normal life going, despite those things, and that ends up being their own cross to bear. But you don't the joking about things like that or behavioral things or mental disorders or diseases that they have is very very popular. It's like a popular talking point for people who don't have anything to say.
Mhm. And
What about? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, that's something we kind of talked about last night. Like, you have to figure out how to be interesting on your own
Mm-hmm.
and interested in other things besides what you can take from people. Um, you have to get into some kind of arts, some kind of music, some kind of literature. You have to take advantage of that thing in your hand that will show you anything that you want to see in the whole world, but somehow it's making everyone dumber. So, somehow we have to rein it in and take this technology back and make it, beneficial for us again instead of brain rot, right? You could literally learn
Yeah.
anything about anything that you can even think of and more. And you're sitting there following cult leaders and being weird and just sitting in your own hate and gooning all the time.
Yeah, I thought about what you said last night about the musical thing too, and it occurred to me that many times I'm into, you know, music is one of my interests. I'm a regular person, so I like music. But I specifically like electronic music a lot. And one of the things that I've noticed about producers and people who are into, let's say, synthesizers and electronic music is people like that many times, if you watch videos, tend to be people that look like they would be awkward or they wouldn't have any social skills, or they can be out of shape, they can be sweaty people, or whatever it is, but they have something that they're dedicated to all the time. And music, especially electronic music for some reason, really pushes people into that, and they dedicate all their time to it, and they end up making something, they create something, and it gives them a group of people that eventually people will listen to it. They want to hear it. It'll uplift people, and they'll get friends out of it, and they have a community of people. I think that having a community, like the idea of a community, to me, especially from or on the internet, is really, I think, a cool thing, because whatever your thing is, I mean, if it's like woodworking or synthesizers or reading, or you're a lax bro, or you're whatever the thing is that you do. I mean, dudes who collect Nike shoes or whatever, man. It's a thing that they spent their time on, and they have people who are into it, and like it gives them a group of friends. And
Mhm.
people are wondering, a lot of guys, last night you brought up like the friendship epidemic with guys, and this is, I think, it really has become a real thing for so many reasons. But again, the only thing that we can be accountable for as men is ourselves first. And you have to give, you have to it's important to give. You receive by giving. You get, the more you give. You also can't let yourself be walked all over and for people to take advantage of you. This is like a balanced thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, by giving, by serving, but also, I don't know. I just think that finding friends is very important. And if you wait for people to reach out to you, they won't do it. It's great when people reach out to us, but you have to make the effort yourself. One more thing. I have a very dear friend that I've had my whole life, and when we were teenagers, he had an older cousin who seemed like he was a lot older than us, but he was really only 2 years older than us, but he seemed a lot older. And his cousin, tragically, one night he just died. He was there one minute and he was gone the next. And it was very bad. And this affected my friend in a very deep way. And he learned a lot about life from him in the time that they had. And he told me last year that one of the important things that his cousin Brandon, rest in peace, taught him was that he had this big like notebook beside his bed. And he asked him, "What is this? What's that for?" And he said, "Those are numbers. That's everybody I know is in that book." And he said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Every Sunday, I take about 3 hours out of the day, and I call people. I just go through the notebook and I just call them." And he was like, "Doesn't that, we were teenagers, and he was like, doesn't that take a lot of time?" And he was like, "Yeah, but you don't understand. One day, someone in that notebook will be gone, and one day somebody in it will be in trouble, and one day somebody, and you have to reach out to people. You have to take the time to call people. It's just as important, I think, to answer the phone when people are calling you,
Mhm.
because now that, you and I grew up at a time when nobody knew where you were. If they wanted to catch you, then they would call you at home,
Mhm.
unless they saw you out somewhere. But now we have tracking location devices everywhere we go. And if you don't answer the phone, there was a time when if you didn't answer the phone, it was like, why aren't they answering the phone? And now people have kind of gone through that, and it's like, oh, nobody's going to answer the phone. So it's important when you get a phone call and you look at the phone and a number pops up and it's your friend, to answer the phone. And, for me, again, it's like if I'm at work, or if there are only a few different situations where I'm not going to answer the phone. But for the most part, I want to be the person who answers the phone. If my best friend calls me in the middle of the night, I want to be the guy who answers the phone for him. I want
Mhm.
to be the only one out of all the people because I also want him to do that, but I can't control that. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. If you want friends, you have to be friendly. That's a that's a Bible verse. You got to put yourself out there. Um, at the same time, don't be disappointed. Cast your net really wide and try and keep in touch as much as you can and give as much as you can. But that's just something that's going to have to be left to chance because sometimes people don't want to be found. For whatever reason, they don't want to answer the phone. And I know a lot of people who go through things like depression. And so it has nothing to do with you. You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to reach out and be friendly and they're not answering, just remember that people go through a lot of things and if they're going through something hard, sometimes they don't want to talk to you because they're embarrassed. They don't want you to see
Yeah.
them at such a low point, right? They want to be the one to come and be like, "Hey, I'm doing good," and they'll call you back when they feel better or whatever. So, just because people aren't getting back to you doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I've got a very good friend, Andrew. Shouts out to Heel Dog out there that I talk to every weekend. We always talk on the weekends. He lives in another state, and I live here, and we can. That's how we connect, and we have long conversations just about every weekend on the phone. But I know that if I call him during the week, he's with his wife and kids. I'm not going to call him during the week. That's his time. That's his thing. But I also know that I can talk to him on the weekend. So I try to respect, his time. He's also not calling me during the week. That's fine.
Mhm.
So we have to be aware of what other people are up to. But to reach out nonetheless, I think.
Yeah. And well, because I've done a lot of love bombing in my days, like going overboard, trying to make friends, trying to force it, gifts and activities and stuff like, and it just fizzled out. And I'm like, why did I do all that? They're not my friend anyway. So it's like just got to keep pushing. If it doesn't work out, it's not always going to be like I said, instant best friends. And back in the old days, like they had education that, we had the trivium and the quadrivium, and people were a lot more like well-rounded. And because I can't think of any musician that has trouble, um, dating or pull, getting potential partners. Not that they don't have other issues or whatever,
Yeah.
but artistic people are always just going to have people gravitate to them because they are inspiring, they're fun, they're into things, they're interested, they're not trying to fill up their cup by plugging into you. They're like in tune with a lot of other stuff going on, and
Yeah.
usually musicians are just always going to be universally attractive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I guess we're kind of winding down here. If you think so, I mean, I've got just kind of the last thing for dudes.
Okay.
Obviously likability. And I think that I mentioned last night how it's important for people to be generous with people, especially older people and especially younger people, to be generous with your time and how you treat other people, because we do have a lot to learn from older people. We've got a lot to learn about how they've made their lives and about the stories that they can tell you and their general temperament. If they're good, have a good temperament, I mean, that's something to learn from. Younger people can teach us something about how to chill, how to have a sense of humor, how to be self-deprecating. It's also important to not let yourself be walked all over. And I think that, I mentioned last night about anger. I mean, for me, it is very difficult to get me angry, to make me lose my temper. A thing that a lot of people say is, I have an anger problem, so dot, dot, dot.
Mhm.
Well, everyone has an anger problem in that sense because their anger becomes problematic. But the question becomes how to control your passions, how to control your emotions, how not to. Young people run on emotion.
Yeah.
They are all emotional. That's why It's young people who fight all the time. It's young people who, you know, have what they call in England antisocial behavior at the pubs. That's why it's young people who, drive fast. That's young people who fight over social media. That's a young person's game.
Hmm.
But the older you become, you really, I think we all sort of chill out about things, and like it's very difficult to make me angry about anything. I can't imagine like losing my temper at work, like about anything, for example. But there are times when anger is righteous, and there are things that we should be angry about. If you witness someone hurting someone else, or if they're going to, God forbid, try and hurt your family, or they insult the one you love, or whatever it is, there are times when anger can be, even physical anger, is important and is appropriate. But in general, I think that men must come to terms with the sense that the time honored things that made the Romans and the Spartans and the knights great, those sorts of people, a sort of warrior mindset, is that they are strong and they are competent and people rely on them, but they are also gentle with the people that they love.
Hmm.
So honor and integrity are very important. And this goes into something we were talking about last night, which is like, it can be like how to talk to women at work that you work with. It can be how to have friends how to have friends who are women, or how to have friends who are married. That's something that a young man is very, it's like almost totally out of their universe. But that works when you're a man who has honor, who people can trust you, who you have a sense of decorum, you have a sense of you're not going to cross. There's not even a thought of a line crossing. You're going to be friends with people. You're somebody who makes people happy. You're somebody who makes life better for people, I think. But who also is, you can be vulnerable and share stuff, but it has to be within a certain sphere and certain bounds. Guys tend to either not say enough or talk too much, which is kind of what I'm doing now. So,
Oh, no, this is our show. That's what you're supposed to be doing,
yeah.
talking.
Mm,
And you're saying a lot of great things. I mean, I think this is really good advice. It's just hard to nowadays it's like the attention span is so short that you have to get your point out in like 30 seconds or less, I think is the optimal TikTok time,
yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
just finding people who sit through a long form show like this is really a special and rare. I mean, honestly, this is for, an upper IQ type audience,
Hmm.
right? And like Jay especially. But j our shows too, because they're long form and we talk about literature and we talk about, philosophy and stuff like that. It's not brain rot. Um, and the less time you can spend interacting with social media, I think if you want to, end it on anything, it's like that's not the real world. That's
Right.
not how we get along. Last night we mentioned that X is indistinguishable from 4chan in the early 2000s now, right? In the way that people
Yeah.
treat each other and what they say and the things that they felt comfortable saying, only because they were anonymous online, they feel comfortable saying now a full face, podcast about it and send me money. So it's just young people have so many more obstacles, I feel like, than we did in the 90s. The world was very simple compared to what they have to deal with now. Our social circles were simple, they were tight, they were friends and family, cousins, school, church, work. Um, we weren't getting so much feedback from weirdos and gooners and like anonymous and like envy people and just I
Or
couldn't.
from like-minded people, like you mentioned last night, like overzealous people, people who are highly opinionated and are new to something,
Mm.
right? Or who have comments about your character or what you do right away, which is fine, man. Free country. But But there's only so much trolling I can do of Geraldo on X before I that was one thing I was dedicated to for about a day was troll. I don't like Geraldo. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Uh-huh.
No, but before it starts to eat away at you, like, so what am I doing with my life? Like scrolling through Instagram Reels or TikTok is fine, but I think we're all aware that when it's over, none of it's going to be remembered. It all goes into the void,
Mhm.
and the person that is liking your reels or whatever, if you meet them in real life, will probably not even bring that up or remember that at all. They want to know something about you.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And yeah, you can't judge your success as a person by likes and clicks because uh lots of bad people and unlikable people get likes, clicks, follows, and shares. So it really does not reflect on you as a person, how successful or likable you are, your success online. It's almost a credit to you if you don't have that much of a social media presence. Because the AI is trying to turn us into certain types of people. So they just want a red person, they want a blue person, they want a rainbow person. And all of the stuff, the media that you consume is trying to turn you into somebody that is not nuanced or multifaceted,
Yeah,
right? A
absolutely.
snap
Yeah.
judgment type person who sees the world in us and them. And yeah, it is the opposite of congeniality and diplomacy, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Diplomacy, giving people a way out in real life. So, well, thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate it. That was a lot of fun. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe somebody got something. I know they got something out of your stuff. Hopefully, they got something out of me rambling on, I guess.
Did I
Um,
answer all your questions?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Actually,
definitely.
yeah.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
I'm still thinking
And,
about what is ladylike because that kind of threw me
mm,
for a loop. I'm
yeah.
thinking like Melania Trump is very ladylike,
Yeah.
but she's also very unbothered. Um, she doesn't get caught up in the muck. She just kind of is very self-contained and looking good and being mysterious and ladylike over there.
Yeah. Well, the opposite question would be how to be a gentleman. And,
Yeah, good.
that's something that comes through cultivated, church family education.
Mhm.
And it's a kind of a forgotten word, but it's something that's really important. I didn't even get to how to act in different social strata. For instance, like how to act around poor people, how to act around very wealthy people.
Mhm.
Um, for instance, folks, here's my last tip, dudes. If you find yourself in the company of wealthy people, okay, or you go to, let's say, a country club, this is very, again, very specific, very nuanced. Don't talk about money and don't bring up money and don't offer to pay for things and don't have cash. Oftentimes, those situations deal with account numbers or cards, and it's a thing that goes unspoken. Many people, especially on the internet, people who make a lot of money and people who are rich are different from wealthy people. And truly wealthy people, there's different forms of wealth. You can be wealthy in spirit, you can be wealthy in with your family, but wealthy in terms of your finances. Wealthy people tend to really not appear wealthy. They drive normal cars and they wear normal clothes and they have normal looking families, but they also have, again, cultivated something that many people strive for, which is they live and work in a small place where they have a lot of like minded people and they're safe. And you
Mhm.
have to admire people. That's something I think we can all sort of strive for in a way. Just like, you know, oh, I think one of the big, just to finish off, I one of the things I worry about is people that I care about not understanding how the average person in this country works, or like going out at night or going to places where they shouldn't be. And I think that if there's one final thing that people should trust, men and women should trust, it's they should trust their gut in social situations, or like it's that old thing about like if you're walking down the street and there's a person walking towards you and you feel like something's off, trust your gut and you can cross the street. It's fine, because people get in trouble, especially physically. They are willing to have anything happen to them as long as they don't make a scene or like offend the other person. But
Mhm.
those things go out the window when you're dealing with people who are clearly intent on harming you. And I think that a lot of people are unaware of the way that the world really works in a lot of those times and places. And the only way to sort of get a sense of that is to go out into the world and know a lot of people. So
Oh, yeah. And I would say that I have a ex unique experience in that I've met so many people traveling around in like just doing conspiracy stuff, doing conferences, doing the school bus trip, meeting people through alternative media. I've been in any kind of social situation you can imagine, like you said, from super poor, just hanging out, like smoking blunts, to like super rich, and they hired trained to play their private concert for, at a billionaire's party, and we're fitting in just fine. So, um, there's, yeah, there's a lot to be said for being a flexible person who can fit in a lot of different social situations. And that comes from, again, having a confidence, having a sovereignty, knowing that these people don't necessarily reflect like everything you are, but you can sit down and have a nice time. I mean, I know a lot of people who are like literally disowning their families because they didn't like the way they voted or whatever. So we have to be able to exist with each other beyond that, what separates us, and just, I don't know, just chill out and have some manners for a second. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Good call. Well, what do you got coming up?
What are we gonna do next? We have two books. I thought Aleister Crowley was one of
Hmm.
them, and then maybe
Yeah,
one about the Dark Enlightenment.
yeah.
Tech lords, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we should do the Aleister Crowley first. I think we should do the
Okay,
Lockman.
because
Yeah.
honestly, these tech guys, this new technocracy, Silicon Valley people, it doesn't seem like they're very well adjusted, uh, chill types. What do you think?
I think they're like your friend Isaac said, and these nerds want to kill us.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like they had not a lot of success socially, and so they had to grow up and show everyone. And now they're trying to get some kind of revenge,
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
the way they were treated for being nerds. But it's like, well, maybe they were right to treat you that way if you were that hateful that you would grow up and like enslave us all. So,
I think of all people, Steve Bannon had a good take on this. I saw him on Tim Dillon, and he was talking about the indentured servitude state of Silicon Valley, especially how it started. And when you get people who go out and are coding all day and work for nothing, and they essentially become slaves in a number of ways, and then if they hit it big, that sort of is that's a reflection of what their personality is going to be. People who have something to get over on other people, and a lot of times these people, I don't know, but I think that there are people who in any situation, I guess, tend to be. There's a lot of sociopathy that is around in the world now, and they have been given supreme power. Obviously, the psychopaths are going to be they're going to be the pyramid people forever. That's what they are. But the average sociopath and the snitch culture and the people who are given, especially during Karanka, right? People who were given a little bit of power to call in on snitch lines or whatever. Those people they still have their thing, and there's only a number of ways that you can combat that.
yeah, and it seems like a lot of people's motivation was getting back at the people who did them dirty in high school. So that's kind of the point of our show is like maybe we can temper some of these experiences that you don't have to carry with you until you're some kind of like weird Osmandius like
Yeah. Nice Ozymandias
yeah.
reference to Percy Shelley there. That's pretty good with a Shelleyan sonnet. That's a pretty
It's
good
like
way to end. Yeah.
we're Revenge of the Nerds. So we don't want people taking revenge and like using their super brain powers for evil. So
That's
it's like,
right. Yeah. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Right.
yeah.
Meanwhile, he's crumbled into dust. Certainly. Yeah. I think that again that ties into if you're a person, especially if you're a charismatic person, a person who is likable, that should lead out to that should you have concentric circles of people that you deal with. So you don't have to worry about the people that you come across in life wanting to get back at you if you've been kind to them. Now, a lot of times, we love our nerds. We love our nerds and especially Chad nerds. We're talking about like dorks here. Okay. The dorks and those types of people, all you have to do is be kind and have, try to have like some sort of relationship with people. And I think there's a lot. I mean, when you're a teacher and you have a big group of people that you deal with, adults, young people, the way to be successful I've found is to know everything about people from what you get from them. So you know what people like, what they dislike, what their families are like, who their parents are. You know what their dad does for a living. You know if they have kids, what their kids do. You know what kind of music they like. And you just remember those things and you remember their names. You say people's names and you don't have to worry about anybody wanting to get it back at you if you just kind of cultivate that sort of relationship with people because people will remember you as a kind person, not necessarily a nice person. It's not
Mhm.
always about being nice as we discussed last night, but being kind, which means like if you're an authority figure, if you're like at your job, that people, especially young people, they want rules, they want structure, they crave structure. We think that young people don't want those things because they want to be free. When we were young, we wanted no rules, really. We want to be able to do what we want. But we need structure and we need some sort of guide to go. We have parameters, but within that, you can have flexibility. You can be kind to people and make things funny. You can make things enjoyable. But a lot of people, you know, are not that way. They're not wired that way, or they're not. They. I think like as far as success goes, and that's different for different people. But there's really like two types of people who are successful, and one is the type of person who, when they become successful, they want to bring others along with them. They're kind to them. They want to uplift people. They want to uplift people to where they are, either mentally or even sometimes financially, whatever that happens to be. And the other is a type of person who becomes successful despite other people, and they stamp down on their faces to be up above them. And so the former is certainly, I think, certainly better than the latter.
I heard of this book, and maybe it's something you'd be interested in reading. Maybe we can talk about it. It was called Careless People, and
Mm,
it's somebody's experience about working in Silicon Valley, about what the tech bros are actually like. So look that up,
yeah, I'll
and
look it up.
yeah, maybe we can talk about it. And next time you see me and BLA, we'll probably be doing Aleister Crowley, um, biggest wizard of all time, the
Yeah,
reading,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. John D. and Crowley. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe Hermes Trismegistus,
Yeah.
right? Sort of align with those people, but certainly Al Crowley is the wicked wizard.
And the connections to this person and what he did to the 20th century pop culture cannot be understated. So
Mhm.
that's going to be really good.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Jamie. Hey, everybody, go to my channel, Bazed Analyzer at YouTube. Help me get those numbers up.
Yes,
Watch
and you
my
have members
stuff.
too, right? You have a member
I
section.
have I have members. People can support me through memberships. I hope people enjoyed this one and that they liked certainly the quality of our video and our audio, which wasn't our fault, but I hope they enjoyed this one more and that they got a lot out of this. I think there's definitely a lot to learn from Jamie here. Let me give a shout out to my friend Jerry at Exposing Powerful Lies. I'm going to be hanging out with him next week, which is I get to go meet somebody I've been friends with for a long time, and I get to meet him in person. So
Oh, nice.
thank goodness for that. Yeah.
Well,
So
say
thank you,
hi to
Jamie.
him for us because I've seen that name in our chats too. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, have a good night.
Peace.